Go. Righty ho. Hopefully that is everyone live. Hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Chaos Pantheon. Today there's a couple more of us, as you can see. There's not just myself, Dara, and Dave from. Is it David or Dave? Do you prefer?
Either works. I'm not
Either
picky.
it works, yeah, because I have like Death Guard Dave and you got like Tizcan Dave. But we have two extra guests today whose name I completely don't know, so I guess they'll have to introduce themselves, I suppose. So we'll start with the person representing the generic Chaos Space Marines, so a bit of the all of the paths of the different gods. Who the hell are you and why the hell are you here?
I'm Russell Tasson. I'm David Savage's co-host for the Tizcan podcast. I've been playing CSM for about 5 years, and I've had a lot of fun and done a lot of work. And thanks to Joe from War Games Live, I'll now forever be known as the War Master. So thanks, Joe. But no, I've had a lot of fun. I'm mainly focused on playing with Abaddon and Black Legion. Matter of fact, I was just signing in for a tournament this coming weekend, and I see that they finally took the sub factions out of there. So yeah, but yeah, no, I've been doing that for several years now, and I've had a lot of fun playing Chaos Space Marines. That's the False Emperor.
Good shout there. Get death to the false emperor indeed. Sorry guys, I had a bit of reverb then because my dumb ass forgot to close down the tab that was checking the stream. So you just completely got a little bit of reverb then for 30 seconds or so, but I've got rid of it now. So I do apologise for that, guys. But again, we have someone else who's also here, and this side it's the more immaterial version of the Chaos. So do you want to introduce yourself, mate?
Yeah, so I'm Franco, the True Lord. I am the demon guy, like in the UK and for demons in general. But I faction specialist for demons, 17 years playing them. Um, Everything demons on the channel, on Facebook, Instagram, and all that stuff. Just trying to help people learn faction, get better at it. Trying to provide something I never had growing up and play faction. But yeah, and events every weekend as well. So pretty much have so much knowledge of demons. I'm just going to share out for everyone else.
Very nice. So, sorry, yeah, that everyone's saying I'm quiet. That was my bad. I went to turn down the sound that was coming from the reverb, but I accidentally turned down my mic input. But I'm very professional on this one. And of course, we are also joined by the two usual hosts, starting with the Blood God Servant himself. Who are you, Mister?
Hi, folks. It's Dara from the Red Path. As many of you might already know, we do a lot of World Eaters content over on the Red Path. Been playing Eaters for a long time now. I think currently I'm sort of like the cult leader of the non-Gron movement, which is running World Eaters without Angron, which has been going well. And yeah, having a really good time. Got my first game of Pariah in today, got another one tomorrow. Really enjoying the new missions, really enjoying where 10th is right now and having a great time. Chaos, Chaos is just great right now. I think everyone's having a pretty fun time with it.
And of course, bringing in the rear, but no less than any of the other gods. Although, if you ask me, it's probably the worst one. I won't lie. Do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, I'm David, Doombolt Man. I am host of the Tizcan podcast. I have Russell on there all the time with me. Yeah, I just live in the land of Magnus doing nothing wrong, and Thousand Suns forever, man. So we've had a pretty good run.
Silly Doombolt Man, as we like to call him. So obviously this has been this is definitely the biggest change that 10th edition has seen. Obviously we've seen some pretty big changes before, especially for my faction, one of them. But this is not just a faction change, this is almost, especially with a new season, this is a game-wide change. Some people are even hailing it as 10.5 edition, which so far I could probably actually see that being fairly accurate to everything. But obviously, what we're going to do, guys on the stream who are in the chat, so they understand what's going on. Obviously, all our factions got changed in different ways, and then Pariah, Nexus, and core rule changes have changed something for us all equally in a way. So what we'll do is we'll go through our factions, we'll briefly talk about some changes, how we're feeling overall, some things we're happy about, some things we're not so happy with, and then basically we'll obviously go through each of us. So we'll start it off with, we'll go over to the Chaos Space Marines, the Undivided, because I think you possibly are one of the worst hit ones out of the lot of the Chaos Pantheon here. A lot of red on that page, I won't lie. So do you want to talk us through some of the notable changes, what you think, and how you're feeling still going into Pariah Nexus? You got yourself on mute. There you go.
Maybe I should unmute myself, huh? So no, I think if you look at it in a vacuum, it would be pretty sad. But I think playing CSM since the one wound Marines, I'm still happy that I got rules. So I'm I'm pretty yeah, Legionnaires going up to 90 points makes sense. Venom crawlers are pretty good. I wish they wouldn't have gotten hit, but they got hit. Warp Talons, I can see it, but they kind of I think if you were playing them correctly, where you had to be eligible to fight, I think the wording wasn't really that too much of a nerf, but like the points I think are pretty high at 135 points, where you could run something like Possessed if you want to do a rapid ingress play and maybe get a little bit more toughness and movement out of it. Um, so I mean, overall, I think I messed with my list a little bit. I lost 130 points, but just going out and playing one practice game with it, I didn't even really feel the hurt too bad. So it's not
That
as bad as it's not as bad as the red looks. I'll say that. But we have some really good faction rules to play with. So
that is true. A lot of people coming across with the opinion that the CSM nerfs were potentially a bit of a jump of a gun. Not really, had the tournament results come in yet to prove that it needed such an amount of points cuts. And obviously, the Warp Town thing was sort of fairly touchy with the subject of it being far more abusive. In is it Raiders? Is it the one that they could do it without having to kill you and they could just fall back? Um, but I mean, do you reckon that they potentially jumped the gun on the nerfs and maybe it's a bit harsh, or do you reckon it's manageable and you'll be fine either way?
I think it's manageable. I think one of the parts that I've always liked about playing the CSM is trying to find creative ways to play against the chaos tax and do well with it. So I mean, this we're in a lot better position right now than we've been in most of the time. So I'm happy with it. And I also don't want CSM to be overpowered because I don't want that how it felt in the fall when I roll up to a table and people are like, oh no, here they come. So
I,
I'd
I
rather be underestimated than be overpowered. So
I must
I
admit, I
like it
did do that a
personally.
few times when I rolled up to the 36 Dark Commune, and I was like, oh, for God's sake. I was like, here we go
Yeah,
again.
exactly. So no, there's still a lot of play with it and a lot of fun. They're not overpowered, but they're definitely you can still compete with them, and that's exactly where I like them at. So overall, I personally am pretty happy where CSM is at the moment.
Nice, nice. And obviously, since you're one of the few of us that does have a codex yet, just very quickly, what detachment is it you wanting to play at the moment, and sort of where do you think your heart's going to go?
Um, there's three of them that I like, and I guess for teams, we did a team practice yesterday, an 8 versus 8. I played two different lists. I played a renegade list that looks more like a pack bound list, and I think that's where I'm going to settle. And then I also played a vehicle skew list that where we used Vanguard, and that actually was pretty resilient with a 1 CP armor content and just a ton of vehicles. And doing teams, I didn't impose my Abaddon tax that I always put on myself. So it felt like I had a lot of extra units and they were really tough and that was a lot of fun. The Vanguard and vehicles seem really powerful. I know that's not, you know, maybe like for example, I was trying to decide between Renegade and Packdown and the couple games of Renegade that I played I didn't like and then Packdown not being as reliable as it was previously and I was like, I wish I could mix the two and I was like, why not? And that's really where I found myself is a more pack bound style looking list, but playing it as Renegade, which you start talking about like I've been running Predators for a few months now. Now you're shooting infantry on an objective. Those autocannons are neg 3. Last cannons are neg 5 on infantry on an objective. So there's a lot of interesting play if you look at a pack bound style list, but running it as Renegade is. I've actually found a lot of really good success so far. So.
That's cool, man. That's cool. I know Dara has been living dreams in his head of doing the Chaos Cults build. Is that still happening, Dara?
Dude, it's not. Yeah, it's not dreams anymore. Like I'm slowly accumulating the models, but I don't know. I mean, I definitely think Chaos Cult is like one of the most underestimated detachments in that book. Everyone is just like, oh, it's trash. It's like, oh, it's the Crusade detachment. They all say that. And then you run them over with like 30 something accursed cultists who hit pretty much harder than they hit when they were at their peak level, and have the speed of world leaders and have most of the rules that world leaders have as well, including blood surge on the accursed cultists, which is a vibe. I think they're like, I don't know, I talk to people and they're like, it's not that good. But we had that guy at the ACO, I think it was,
Oh
take
yeah.
the chaos cults right to the top, and his list was like very close to the one that I have written as well. So I don't know. I think my personal opinion is like CSM got hit harder than they needed to, but I definitely agree with Russell. There's a lot of play still there. Um, and yeah, I think maybe now that we've seen a couple of good results out of Chaos Cult, people might actually start being like, wait, were we just wrong about this? And I don't know. It wouldn't shock me if like 3 months time we see Chaos Cult like showing up a lot more. Wouldn't be too surprising.
Might have to start calling you silly cultist, man.
I'll wear that. I'll wear that flag, no problem.
Good lord.
Yeah, they are really good. There's no way my back can handle 6 rounds of that, or bigger tournaments in 6 rounds.
That's like RTT for me at most, I think.
Right.
That's fair. But speaking of the armies that were sort of on the more hit side rather than the bonus side, we'll go over to the silly Doombolt man himself. Silly Doombolt man, what happened?
Yeah, we flew a little too close to the sun, is I think what happened. So obviously they nerfed rituals, but I'll say this: I got my first game in with the post data slate yesterday, and generally speaking, it's not as bad as it looks on paper. And I think that's generally, what most of the players have been seeing is we can live with this, we can work with it. They didn't stop us from being able to do stuff like the double movements. Like we can still double move, we just can't double move the same unit. We can still dish out lots of reroll saves. We just have to be a little bit more. I guess we need to plan it out a little bit more, which is, I guess, our thing. And outside of that, we still double Doombolt, so that's still on the table. Like double casting those things is still something you can do. You just have to be very planned ahead of time with it. And then we actually, what was hilarious was they gave 15 points off the Mutilith Vortex Beast. So I see a lot of folks, including. It's great. I'll take it, sure.
I can't say shit. I'm still over an 80-point typhus, so I'm not going to say shit, but I was confused.
They upped the Hammerhead gunship, and they brought the Mutilid down, and I'm like, this is just an organic Hammerhead gunship with different firing profiles. Like, are we doing this? Okay.
Yeah, so we're back to running multiple Mutiliths again. Now, I primarily play on GW terrain, so I know that there's still probably some I know the folks that play on primarily WTC terrain are probably still a little bit apprehensive about switching to them, but I'm sure they're going to be testing them and seeing if they're actually viable now. And I'm sure at some point we'll start talking about the pivot rule and how that's affecting everybody. But in general, I think the thing for us, I think that I don't like is the terrain layouts that they have look like they are very melee centric. So there's a lot of staging areas on there, and generally speaking, T-Suns don't want to be in melee. We want to just keep you at about 12 inches away and just blast you with our flamers and Doombolts and everything. And so I'm a little bit concerned about how we adapt to that stuff, but I think we've got tools to do it.
That's fair. A lot of people sort of... I don't think the list particularly has changed for T-Suns competitively. Obviously, that's going to be a much harder thing to fix. That's probably going to be a Codex fix, as just the design of the army kind of requiring at the Cabal points. It still feels like it's like a windmill slam Magnus in every list. Then you got your Araman, then like your 6 Sorcerers / Infernal Masters, then all the Rubrics for them, and then you got like 400 points to play around with. Still the case?
Still the case. Yep, your core of the army is the same. I think you might see some folks run Chaos Spawns more. They started to show up in some lists, and I think if you're going to see more melee lists, everybody was kind of leaning towards Zangors now, so I think you'll see more of them. A really under-the-radar nerf that they had in the book was to the Exalted Sorcerer, who before would zap stuff, and then they would have their movement, have their advance, and have their charges. And now what they did is just made it so it's -2 to movement and -2 to charges, so it doesn't affect the advance part of it anymore. And I think people are just going to kind of toss him out of the list and just say, all right, look, we're taking the Ba-Bomb now, which is kind of like the 20 Zangors with the Shaman, and we just basically pick them up and chuck them across the board at you and just say, okay, chew through those while we go take and play primary with the rest of the army.
You just call it the Bar-Bomb like a goat because it goes bar.
Yeah, I didn't come up with that. I credit our community for it, but yeah, that's what we're calling it, the Ba-Bomb.
Tap Thousand Suns community, well done. Someone in chat is quickly asking, where can I follow the T-Sun guy? Hello, T-Sun guy. Can you please answer that one?
Yeah, hello. So you can find us on TizcanPodcast.com, and we are also on the Thousand Suns Discord server.
Well, thank you very much for answering that. So overall, T-Sun's still where if you could put, I tell you what, we'll also I'll let Russell answer this as well. Also, if you could put yourself on the tier scale, so obviously from S to like F tier, Russell, we'll come back to you first. Where would you put CSM right now?
I'd say high B, maybe A minus, somewhere in there. I still think they're in a really good position, especially because there's so many different builds that you can play with. I mean, like you said, I mean, Cultist I think is probably the best, honestly. And then there's so many other different plays and combinations out there that I think it'll be a while. I mean, just like before, it took almost a year to figure out the ACDC chosen builds that like Chima won the world championship with. So there's so much stuff to play with in CSM, and you know, yeah. So they're still there.
Okay, go on about the T-Suns. Where are we going on the scale?
Yeah, I think if I remember right, most people had us around like A tier, and I think we probably slide like within A tier, probably down a bit. But honestly, I'm kind of like tentative on that. Like I could see that moving around depending on how the meta shakes out. So we might drop a bit if stuff leans a certain way and it kind of goes against what we're good at.
I do think out of all of us on this channel right now in our factions, yours is the most probably player skill dependent, because the difference between your average Jimmy with 1,000 Suns and then you run into someone that knows 1,000 Suns, it's like two different entire games. So I can see that, but I think at peak you're probably still in A tier just because the toolbox is just that good of like the things you can do, like double move is just incredibly powerful. Doombolt is still silly Doombolt and makes everyone laugh. Twist of Fate, can we touch on that very quickly? Someone did say in chat about Twist.
Yeah.
They believe that Twist is too expensive right now. What do you think about that? Because obviously Twist has been changed from you actually get to take armor saves now. It doesn't chin off. Is it an extra AP2 to everything? Isn't it? I believe.
That's exactly right, and that is the one thing I think caught everybody surprised was the fact that they essentially nerf the power, but then they don't nerf the cost. And I think it was priced Cabal point wise. It was priced pretty good. I mean, 9-10 points or so for your to take an armor save away from something. So if you're saying, okay, that's too strong and you're going to nerf it down a little bit, which they did, I still think you bring the price down a couple points on the Cabals, maybe 7 points or so, somewhere in that realm. So I do think ultimately the net effect is roughly the same. I still think people will use it because you generally were using that power. At least for myself, I would use it mostly in the Custodes matchups, and I would say, look, I want them on their invuln save. You know, other matchups where you have AOC involved and cover involved, like that just negates so much of your AP. So I can just add that to AP1, and essentially I'm almost guaranteed to be on 4-up invulns at that point. So I think in general, you're still going to be using that quite a lot. But I completely agree that it's a little weird that they didn't reduce the point cost for it.
That's fair. Yeah, I think Thousand Sun's probably still looking pretty solid, like you said. But we'll move on to the sort of... I'll take next, because I think out of all of us, I'm probably sort of in the middle of the sort of like buff/nerf. So we've sort of gone from the more nerf factions. I'm sort of in the middle with it. Obviously, my biggest nerf is probably more to do with the core rules nerf to indirect, because I'm sure you're all happy to hear my indirect getting nerfed. Don't all smile. I'm shutting down this stream. But yeah, obviously that hits our ability to sort of do the triple PBC as effectively. Still think it's going to be a good unit. Annoyingly didn't come down in cost despite like Manticores and Basilisks and all that coming down in cost. The PBC didn't, so it's still 180, which is quite expensive, but it has got a 2-up save and stuff, so it's not the worst thing in the world. Part of that, we got like the most kind of pointless buffs to points, like Plague Surgeon got cheaper, still ain't taking it. Noxious Blightbringer went down, still ain't taking it. Like you can make those builds like 20 points. I'm still not taking them because it's just 20 points to give up Assassinate. It's still not doing anything for me. So
hey, on the indirect, could you explain real quick on the Plague Burst Crawler for some folks? It took me some digging to kind of get to the bottom of like why it's not a nerf, because I think a lot of people, or it is a nerf, sorry. I think some folks looked at the Plague Burst Crawler and go, well, you're already only hitting on 4s, right? Because you're -1 and it's indirect.
Oh, my sweet summer child.
How do you get around that?
My sweet summer child, I was never hitting on fours with them things. So the most common one was to obviously you could put Mortarion near them if people ran Mortarion. Mortarion would let you ignore the indirect penalty, so you could just hit on threes all the time. But more commonly, because I didn't run Mortarion, was you would run cultists who had scout, and you would do what's called Boil Blight plays, where you'd have a cultist turn one that could scout, move, advance, and basically get within contagion range of a target. One command point, use Boil Blight, which gives all your players calls heavy, so that then offsets it, plus the -1 save, so then it slams in and basically you are shooting effectively at threes. If you bring a Lord of Virulence along, anything that he can target and see will then also get +1 to hit on top of that, so now you're hitting on twos with indirect, which is a little, and ignoring cover, which is a little silly, and that's probably what got it nerfed in the end. Whereas now you are just hard capped on fours, even if you have all those effects going. So it's more going to be used as a direct fire battle tank at that point. However, it is still it's not the worst nerf in the world. I think we still have builds and play around. Blightlords got cheaper now. The cheapest Terminator still probably not going to take them. They just don't. Does anyone really? If I've said to you guys right now, do you care about Blightlord? If I brought 10 Blightlord Terminators, so they've all got 4 bolter shots each and 4 attacks each at strength 5 AP 2-1 damage with lethal hits. Do any of you care about that at all? No, didn't
Not even
think
a little bit. They could make those models like 120 points, and I still wouldn't feel threatened by them.
Maybe even a bigger question is: are Terminators even really that viable right now?
It's
like the Chaos ones. I'm sure some of the Dark Angel stuff might be, but
I think Death Shroud's still play for Death Guard. But go on.
I think personally, if I'm stick with the style list that I'm running, I'm probably still going to run 5 with Abaddon. I know that's kind of crazy because we got access to the Chosen now, but a couple games with Chosen, I went right back to Terminators. I like the synergies better, and I like the ablated wounds that are kind of tough.
Yours are probably it's a weird scenario, Russell, because you're probably in the one case where you can take like your center priest model and then you can bodyguard it. Like our Primarchs, we can't really bodyguard. They just they go do their own thing. And so they even reduced in ours. They reduced the Terminator costs for us. And again, I'm with Aiden here. I'm not taking Scarab Occult right now because I just don't think they really fit the meta right now.
Well, I mean, and in Packbound, they're not terrible either because combi weapons are still a thing. I like the combi weapons on the Terminator, especially rerolling all hits with or without Packbound. So.
That's true, yeah. Because I can see them having uses because the synergies that you get with Packbound and thingy, but the best I can get them is like to get an extra AP and reroll wounds. That's it. So I have no way to give extra hit rolls or give them rerolls to hit. So combi weapons are super unreliable for my Blight Lords. The one thing I could see potentially happening, and again we'll talk about it more when we get to the generic game changes to Pariah Nex, is a lot of the new actions are requiring you to survive through your opponent's turn. And 5 Blight Lords for 150 points just for defensive stats and profile to just teleport in and start an action. It's not something you can particularly kill without committing a decent amount of firepower to it, compared to something like Plague Marines, which die to a stiff breeze. So there could be an argument that could be a use for them, but you're still like, is it worth it at that point? Because you can bring 3 Death Shroud for 120 compared to 5 Blight Lords for 150. So we'll have to wait up and see. But I mean, overall, really, net probably negative for Death Guard in terms of like the core rule changes to indirect, and our 2 best characters went up 10 points each, which is. It's not exactly... I was only using 1 of each. Some people were spamming 3 of each, in which case they're probably feeling a lot worse than I am. But I don't think we need 3... I never really got the point of running 2 fights first characters, because they'll just charge both in the same turn, and then they'll eat it on one and then just swing with the other and kill it. Overall, I think Death Guard are probably... They're definitely nerfed. We didn't get buffs to compensate for the indirect nerf, but I don't think it's necessarily nerfed to the faction. It's definitely going to be more of a... It's a nerf to the playstyle of like passive indirect trade, and I think now we're going to be forced to be a lot more aggressive and in people's faces rather than like I sit back, my cultists have put you in contagion range, I picked up your unit for free, your move, sir. Whereas now it's going to be like I have to actively get up there, get line of sight with these PVCs and tanks and start firing away. So, but I think overall I'd still probably put Death Guard in like so like B, low A, very metric dependent, but I still think it'll be fine. I think if you're playing Death Guard and you play him a lot, you'll still be fine. You'll still be able to get solid results. I don't think any army here, even with the worst nerfs to T-Suns and TSM, I don't think anything is like near D tier or anything like Gene Steel Cults. Sorry. But yeah, but for going on there, who's the bigger winner out of Demons and World Eaters here? Who's the bigger winner?
We come off quite well. I haven't really looked at what the World Eaters got, so I can't really compare. But we did get a lot. So
Go on, you take it away.
I think Franco should go because, to be honest, like I'll explain the World Leaders one when we get to it because it's a bit weird.
So I mean, our Greater Demons all got good. Well, most of them were good anyway, and none of them were bad. They got even better. So I mean, we rely less on Be'lakor now, which is an argument in like the demon community now. Do you want him? Do you not? And I don't think there's a wrong or right answer. I think if you want him for your playstyle, take him. If you don't want to run him anymore, don't. But all the Greater Demons got good. The Great Unclean one is stupid now.
Does he
He's
just
always
run
on the
forward
forward
field?
corner
Yeah.
Always. He was already nuts for his point cost. Now he's just always on a 4-up 4-now paint. So yeah, he's just silly, and he didn't go up in points. Which, so I knew we were getting the 6-inch thing. I got told by someone a bit earlier.
So just
and I was
very
like,
quickly,
okay, he's
Franco,
definitely going to go
just
up
for
in
the
points.
chat, can you just explain the change that has happened to Great Demons to make them a lot better?
Yep. So basically, all the Greater Demons now have a 6-inch aura of Shadows of Chaos, just like Be'lakor did. So basically, that means they are always in the Shadows of Chaos. Anyone that is from their own god within 6 inches of them is in the Shadows of Chaos. And so because of that, anything that would proc because of the Shadows, for example, the Ground Clean one with the Endless Gift, would be a 5-up 4-now pain unless he's in the Shadows, to which it becomes a 4-up 4-now pain. But since he sits in his own bubble, he's always in the Shadows, which means it's always in a 4-up 4-now pain. Which is just nuts. And then when I saw like on the points he didn't go up, I was like, wow, that's nuts. And then like the Bloodthirsters, Keepers, Scarbrand, Shalaxi can always use the Strat to advance and charge in the Shadows now, which is really good. Especially for Shalaxi. I'm a big Shalaxi simp, so being able to just 14-inch move just because everyone loves old Shalaxi, right? Like she's amazing. So so I think we got all the Greater Demons got really better than they already were. I think they're all good in their own way. Fate Weaver's interesting because obviously Vec changed. And I actually like the Vec changes. I think it's less oppressive. You have to see a Calidus in the corner of the board that you can't reach, and it just makes your good stratagem more expensive. But at the same time, like you can really play around with it. And Fate Weaver sitting amongst your good combat stuff to kind of combat other armies with good defensive buffs or like combat buffs from stratagems and stuff like that is quite good. And then other changes, Fiends got pretty cheap now. They're like 105 points for 3, and they're pretty nuts. I think Nurglings being hit a bit is sad, but they're still decent. And they're still good for positional secondaries and blocking out infiltrators and stuff like that. What else got changed? Demonettes went down, but yeah, I really don't. I think they have to be like 80 points before they even become anything decent. But yeah, I think overall we just come out of it amazingly. Like we didn't really get any negatives. We got pretty much over the whole thing buffs. Mono god lists are definitely more viable now because again you want multiple Greater Demons. You want to benefit from it by taking more of their god stuff. So overall, I think maybe a bit early to tell, but I would say we're definitely high B or low A tier wise. But yeah, you're going to see like the Great Unclean one's going to be in every list. Blood Crushers, Bloodthirsters probably in most lists. You probably see a lot of Khorne heavy lists, which makes me sad because I think Khorne's just boring and meh. But yeah, overall, I think we made out of it really, really well, and I'm happy. I can't wait. It's just nice to not have to play the same old stale thing. Pick up because it got very stale playing demons. And as someone who only has demons as their only faction, it become a bit of a drag. But now we can actually play around and, like I said, experiment with monoliths, which is quite fun. So I'm quite excited.
I genuinely think when I read the changes to like the Great Demons get the Shadows of Chaos, because I used to play demons as my main army, Franco, before obviously Death Guard came out, and I always wanted like the greater demons to sort of impact the game a lot more. And when I read that change, I was like, that is so cool. That is such a cool like thing. So Shadows of Chaos always on for them, so you gain always like super buffs for them. Like you said, even advance and charge on a great unclean one is so much like better than it just like being stuck on his like 7-inch move or something. So
Yeah, it's really good. It's just nice to always have that options, and then again as well, being able to drop within 6 inches of the greater demons with like their own god units is just really good. I think it, like you said, it's just really cool for them to be more impactful for the game rather than just a big smashy monster you can send forward or a big tanky monster just sit down. Like they actually have synergies now that you can really use, which I really like.
yeah, I think there's like you can foresee units where it's like Shalaxi moves to a certain spot because your fiends are going to move and advance next to her, so then they can use the strats so they can charge. I just think it's going to
Yeah.
reward a lot of tactical play, and I love changes that are like one thematic because this is thematic. It's not just like, hey, we've bolted on +1 strength to everything in synapse range because that doesn't make sense. Not that I'm unhappy for tier players, but it's just kind of weird. Like just kind of weird. I don't get why being near a big bug would make you stronger. Whereas this makes sense. Like these demons do have obviously more power of the Immaterium around them, so that would like be like being basically in the warp, being next to like you stand next to a Lord of Change, your hands have probably turned into fish fingers or something like that. So I think demons have. Someone in chat said they made out like bandits. I do agree. But I also think it was needed as well because I think they could have probably just given you more points drops. But like you said, I think the real issue was like you were getting a bit bored playing it. You were basically, I saw a lot of your recent reports, and it was basically, I'm going to just score mission points while trying to kind of avoid you, and if you try and do anything, I will punch back with a greater demon.
That's pretty much what it was, and it got incredibly boring, to be honest. And just trying to run different lists, whether they were good or not, just to shake it up. But like you said as well, it is fluffy changes. It's not just here, have this to make you better. It's have this to make you better, and also fit in with the theme of the army. So I think it was a really good change by them, to be honest.
Yeah, so I'm super hyped for that. So would you say low A, top B, do you reckon?
Top B, low A, I think is quite fair for us.
No, it's nice. And hopefully they'll tide you over until we get our books, because I've just realised only one of us in here has a book, so that's the first Chaos Codex, isn't it, CSM?
Yeah. Chaos will get codexes at some point,
Yeah,
right?
eventually. Go on then, silly skull collecting man. Take us to the finish line.
Yeah. For us, the changes are like extremely minimal in terms of rules which affect world leaders. So basically, just our 2 8-band variants dropped by 5 points each, or 10 if you're taking the big squads. So Exalted and regular 8-band went down, which is like pretty good because there's gonna be a lot of them in most armies. So most people's armies went down a lot of points, which is great because sometimes this means you can fit an extra unit in, or you just don't have to have that weird thing of like a Mauler's 140, but 3 8-band are 145. Now they're the same, so you just take the 3 8-band. So I think there's like, it makes them feel better for their points because whatever about 8-band, but Exalted 8-band were like insanely expensive. So if you misplay that unit, you probably just like straight up lose the game. If you play 6-man break wrong, it's just game over. Now they're like a little bit cheaper, so it doesn't feel too bad. But the way that I was structuring my lists, a lot of my lists were like 2005 or 2010 points, and now they're just under. So I can do like a lot of the lists which I would have felt way more comfortable with. Like the one that I'm running at the minute is a what I wanted to bring to Manchester, but points didn't allow it. So now I can do it, which is really good. I think the main thing that is a change for world leaders is obviously how Pariah changes the game. But it's also like the meta that it encourages, and the armies which I perceive to be good right now are generally mid-board melee brawlers, like sisters, demons, CSM. Like a lot of these armies, which I think are going to be very popular
Yeah, fuck
and
you
very
too,
good.
Dara.
I mean, I'm sorry, Aiden, but like, Plague Surgeon went down. But yeah, which I think like in a mid-board brawl, like world leaders win that game pretty much 9 times out of 10, as long as the world leaders player and the opposing player are equal skill. Obviously, a skill advantage flips it in different ways, but I mean, I'm not too stressed about like how the meta is shaping up, and I just think it's very favored towards world leaders.
That's fair. That's fair. I won't lie. I first heard about the changes like through my Discord. I didn't realize they went up. and someone mistyped the wrong thing, and someone put World Eaters 8-bound went down 5 ppm points per model. So I was thinking, your 8-bound squads went down by 15
Dude,
each.
that would be wild. Yeah,
I was
that
like,
would be
wait,
wild.
I was like, whoa. So
one of our boys had a dream earlier in the week, being like, "I had a dream 8-bound and Exalted went down in points," and then they did. We were like, "Let's go, dude." But yeah, I don't know. I think it's like it opens up a bit of variety, and the meta is very good for us right now. So I was kind of like talking with the boys, and we reckon that this is probably the most competitive position World Leaders have been in since 10th started. Especially with like one thing I didn't mention was that our big predators got kind of taken out of the picture. Like we didn't really hit it with T-Sons, but one of the really annoying things they could do with the disc guy was like jump into a ruin, slow my boys down, and then he could move away. But you can't do that anymore because of the order that those things happen. And he can't slow me down that fast as well either, which is pretty good. And if you're playing a tournament where you can't do core stratagems in turn 1, you don't have to worry about Thousand Suns overwatching you in turn 1, so you just dumpster them with an Alpha Strike, which is pretty good too. And then Deck Guard kind of, like you and me were talking about it, it makes the trading game so much easier for me when I don't have to worry about being indirected off the board. So that's super nice. And then CSM, it's kind of an okay game anyway from what I experienced. Like Renegade Raiders, you just have to make sure that you don't put any of your super important units on an objective at a crucial point where they just get hosed off of it. But yeah, in general, I feel like our big predators are not really in the game as much anymore. Like Imperial Guard, which was a very difficult game, not really a difficult game anymore. Not when there's like, 30 extra ponies arriving from the side of the board. That's super nice. So yeah, I'm just feeling really good about this meta because of like the external things that have changed rather than maybe necessarily internal changes for World Leaders. We didn't really see anything, but it's just how things are shaping up. Feels very, very good for us right now.
So where are you putting yourself on the scale, Dara?
Oh, S, for sure. For sure it's S. Yeah, I reckon World Leaders are going to win a lot of events in the next 3 months.
I'm
I
glad
think
you said
like it's
S.
S if you're a good player, right? If you're like a mid-tables World Leader player, you're probably going to go from 2 and 3 to 3 and 2. But if you're a player who was pushing for a podium position, you're probably getting that podium or winning events. So I think for sure this is like the strongest we've been in. And I think apart from Grey Knights, there's not really any army that I'm worried about that. Like we don't have an army that comes to mind where I'm like, I probably can't beat that. And even Grey Knights, I'm like, I'm fast enough to make sure that, I can pressure you hard enough that you can't teleport everything away from me. So yeah, I think it remains to be seen with armies like Demons, Admech, and Tyranids, how the changes are gonna push them forward. I think having my butt spanked by Demons in Bristol was like a learning experience. So I do think they could be quite scary. Then Admech, I have no opinion. Tyranids look good though, I would say, and they're another mid melee brawler, so kind of good for me too.
Admech's an awesome wild card. I'm kind of really interested to see what happens with them because they got much more lethal now, and you just don't know what they're going to come up with. But then you also have like Blood Angels and Black Templar and Dark Angels. I think all of them are probably a sneaky play for possible A tier armies.
Yeah, I mean BA not getting any changes is like definitely quite significant, I would say, but.
Yeah.
That's an interesting match for World Leaders. It's not. Oh, also the other really big thing I just didn't say: Heroic Intervention being 1 CP is like insane for World Leaders. Like so insane. Do you want to try and rush anything into my screen in turn 1 because I've got a unit positioned like 4 inches away, which will intervene and then ruin your day? It's actually like probably one of the biggest changes for us is Heroic being 1 CP. I can't believe it slipped my mind because it's crazy.
Very good.
That is crazy.
Go on, Russell.
Isn't Rapid Ingress 1 now too, or am I
Rapid was always 1.
It's
It
only
was always 1. Okay.
Yeah.
I just never use it.
Yeah, we know you can triple move, okay? But quick, someone in the chat is calling you out, Dara. 2 people in the chat are calling you out. One, we've got Don Houston saying, why don't you have to worry about indirect anymore? And the second one is from Peter Johnson, who says, Space Wolves will whoop World Eaters in this meta. What do you say to those?
To Don, I think the indirect thing is like, I guess it depends what way World Leader lists pivot. we have a video coming out tomorrow where me and Brian go through 2 of our new lists, and I don't want to spoil it, but Brian's list is wild with Angron. It's like probably one of the best Angron lists I've ever seen. And I will just be spamming Jackals with a 4+ invuln and a 5-up feel no pain. So I'm like, good luck indirecting those guys off anything because they're going to be toxic. And Space Wolves is like pretty easy to beat because mounted is a keyword. And that is a keyword that you can just drive things in front of and say, hey, you don't get to play the game. Which is kind of been my experience with like mounted armies in general. It's just like drive a rhino in front of them when they're in an alleyway and they live there for like 2 or 3 turns. And when they kill the rhino, you put something else in their way, like 2 spawn with a 4-up feel no pain. So I really think Space Wolves are like, honestly, like not a threat. And it's very easy for us to kill them because the Thunderwolf Cav are like super, super vulnerable to 8 bands who are just like, yep, tons of attacks, AP2 damage to. Doesn't matter that you've got a 4-up invuln, you'll fail enough, and then they will all die. So I think you can like basically lock wolves out of the game pretty easy. And if they try and like wolf jail you with an early push, you just have your units nearby to do the 1 CP heroic. And if you heroic with a Berserker squad with the Master of Executions in there, you've got 10 Berserkers with Fight First, Precision, Dev Wounds, all the good stuff, who will just blitz the... It's basically 1 CP free combat interrupts with the Mo squad. So I'm not stressed about Space Wolves, to be honest. I think the hardest of the Marine builds is probably Black Templars because they go pretty wide, and some of the bricks in Black Templars, like the... I think is it Hellbrecht's brick? The one where they have like 20 dudes and they were all like very resilient. That's actually a much harder
They're
game,
Crusaders, if I remember right. And they're like their special version of Black Blade Guard.
No, not those guys, actually. I think... I can't remember what they're called. They're like regular Marines, but the Blade Guard dudes are pretty scary too. I think they're Sword Brothers. Maybe it is Crusaders.
It is Sword
There's like 20 of them in this squad or something.
It's Primaris Crusaders with Ramaldus is the big
That's
one.
it.
Because they have a 5-up feel no pain, and there's 20 of them, 2 wounds, and they can kind of figure out where they're going to place the wounds as you're throwing different AP at them. So.
That's bad.
And the 5-up feel no pain just throws everything off, especially if they start spiking.
That's probably the toughest Marine builds for World Leaders.
Especially, sorry, Dara, the sneaky thing there is the fact that they tweaked repulsors and impulsors, so now they can carry those full units now. That's really sneaky, and I think that's going to show up a lot.
Yeah, I think that makes them quite scary. That matchup's hard, but I think the rest of them are okay. Space Wolves, I just like laugh as I pivot my Rhino and drive it sideways in front of you and say... Feast on this, Thunderwolf Cavalry. But yeah, I don't know. It's a good time to be a World Leaders, you know. I'm real happy about this meta.
Fair. So out of you guys, who's actually played a game of Pariah at the moment? I'm waiting for my first one. I'm playing tomorrow, so I've not played a game of Pariah next. As everyone else says, so Russell's played 2, Dara, you played 1, David, you played 1 as well, yeah? Franco, you played 1 as well? Right, so I'm going to let you guys take it away then, because I haven't played a Pariah game yet. I'm getting my first one tomorrow. How different were we looking at?
I'll be honest, I think some of the secondaries, I think tactical, even though some of them come down, I think it's actually a little bit easier, because now you got 18 cards, and then you being able to get new orders once a turn makes a big difference. So, in other words, like, for example, like, I still probably wouldn't get new orders on turn 1 just because you're likely to get one you can't score. But after that, like, if you're behind on secondaries, if you're looking at a secondary average, like, if you're looking for an 8-point average, I think there's some real options. Like, when I ran my vehicle list yesterday, somebody drew bring it down, and they're like, wait a minute, there's no max anymore. So they're like, man, if I could kill your list, I'm going to get 38 points right now.
Jeez.
So, I mean, there's some more opportunities to score secondaries. You know, for example, I always went fix a lot. If I had the opportunity, I'd take fix. Now I think it's just a tactical way to go, especially since I like Legionnaires so much. But like I like that one mission rule that you were talking about, the one where you can't use core stratagems. That makes a big difference, and especially for War Leaders. Now you're looking at that one also gives you the benefit of cover in addition to. So
yeah, it's real good because like, you just dumpster someone in turn 1. No stress about Overwatch, and then it's like your army has the benefit of cover while they're like 3 inches away from the enemy. Like, sure, that feels pretty good. And then there's like prepared positions, probably the best one. Free go to ground and heroic. So if you're running Demon Prince lists with Jackal Tar Pits, that's like free 4-up invulns for the Jackals. I don't know. Yeah, like my experience has been pretty good. I would say it's quite similar to Russell actually, where a lot of people were like, "Oh, you'll probably score lower on tactical." No, not really. As long as you kind of like build maybe 1 or 2 extra action monkeys in there, it's like generally okay. Um, I didn't really find it too bad. I thought it was fun. Like I was drawing cards, being like, "Whoa, what's this?" And then you kind of realize it's just deploy teleport Homer, and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of all the mission rules. I think they're really, really cool. Shocker, the player who has probably the best battle line units in the game is happy that battle line has special rules, right? So yeah, I think I don't know, it's a really nice pack, and playing it has felt like fresh, but not so different that it feels like I have to relearn the game either, which is real nice. And the new deployment zones are great because No Man's Land is smaller. So I can run into the funny Doombolt man quicker.
There you go.
Yeah, A
Well,
plus for me.
I think there's still matchups you probably still want to go fix, like into knights and things like that. That probably still works out in your favor in most cases, just from a, you know, when I look at fix, maybe you guys look at it differently, but when I look at fix missions, I look at what is going to average me more points. Like tactical, sometimes I run the risk of it can be a little swingy depending on which ones you draw, and there's been games where you just, I drew terrible secondaries and I just couldn't score enough. Where like in the night matchups, I think you just go fix to simplify the game still, and then you can probably find another one in there that you can use, to be able to figure out whatever your second fix mission is going to be. But I think the thing that really caught me were the actions, and more specifically on the actions that was tricky is the fact that you can't advance an action and you can't do actions in engagement range anymore, and then obviously not fall back in action as well, and all those kinds of things are they definitely change, because one of the things we used to do with our Bob-omb was we'd put one Zangor in there that had a chainsword, which was kind of cheeky because you could basically say, okay, I'm in combat, but one guy can shoot his pistol, so therefore I can do an action. It's kind of like, all right, well now it's just that part doesn't matter anymore, and I can't actually use that as part of the strategy. So you have to kind of think about, well, if I'm planning on being able to do the homers, or being able to, or expecting to draw the homers tactical card, and I've got a unit position there for it, then I have to also look at the board and realize, well, I can't do that and then risk being charged and then carry that out the next turn, that kind of thing. So that part, and then guard. I think Dara, we were talking about this before the stream went live, but the guard, keeping track of stuff and when it happens, it's way different. So guarding the guarding mission was really weird because you have to declare that in the command phase. So it's where you are, not, hey, I can move and then decide to guard, which a lot of actions used to be that way in the previous mission set. Then on top of that, you have actions that end in your turn, actions that end in the next turn, and they've made stuff that used to be like, you'd think reading it that it would be like, oh, this will end in my turn. It's like, nope, that ends in the next turn. So you've got to survive your next player's turn or your opponent's turn, and that all of that really shakes up kind of how your strategy unfolds through the game, how you play it, and everything. So I think I just keep doubling down. I mean, you've heard Dara talk about how good world leaders are going to be. I think, again, the mission set's going to be very, very heavy for melee armies. So, I think when you're looking at these secondaries, that really plays into those armies, and you realize why they're going to benefit so much from it.
Well, like there's a couple things that I'm taking into consideration here. One, I really like teleport Homer. Now Locust is only 2 points in the center, so it's no longer 15 in the center. That makes a big difference. Number two, I think the biggest thing that brings the average tactical points scored per turn is going to be how many of them you don't have to play. For example, how many times do you draw a capture enemy outpost? Well, that brings your average point per down, tactical points per down per phase, where now that doesn't exist. Or like, for example, drawing the one where you got to kill 20 plus models. If they don't have it, you can get rid of it. So there's a lot of things like that where you're not getting hammered or hosed where you're like, I'm only going to score 3 points for a baby cleanse this turn. Now you can go, okay, well, I'm getting rid of this card, and here's their denial. So now I'm going to score 9-10 points turn one, as opposed to drawing capture enemy outposts and something else like behind it.
Did I bring it down today? and there was no enemy vehicles, and I was like, I can discard this, and it's
Yeah,
free
no,
now. I was like, that feels good, you know?
it really
Feels
does, because
good.
it does bring up your average points scored per turn, being able to get rid of those cards, where we
I
didn't have
mean,
that option before.
yeah, I've only played one game so far. I've got another one tomorrow, but like my average VP score in Leviathan was like 84 to 86. Today I was hitting 90s. It's one game, so we'll have to see if it keeps going, but like you've got containment now, which is new. The new investigate signals is like you have to do an action near a board edge rather than a corner. And I scored that for two edges, which I was like, I don't think I ever scored signals for two corners as world leaders, you know? So
Right.
it was like revolutionary. It's, I think, like you guys were saying, it's like, it's really interesting the way that goes. And Russell's right. It definitely brings your average up. And then melee armies have that capacity to disrupt longer actions, like the actions that run through their turn. A good melee player will say like, sure, I can charge you here and kill that unit, but I can run over here and kill this other unit that's doing an action and then take away your points as well as flipping an objective, which is very, very strong. So I think, good melee players are going to be able to play a better disruption game in terms of scoring than they could before, which is very, very interesting, I think. And not really having to stress about so many cards that is just like unscorable or, not really that feasible is really good. I found myself finding that it was easier to focus on the actual game. And it wasn't trying to ask me to do something that was like extremely weird. The weirdest thing I got was sabotage, which was
Yeah.
like do an action in a terrain feature in your opponent's deployment zone, which lasts for the whole battle round. And I was like, this is wild. Like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I like the new cards. It's fun, and the mission rules are great too. So yeah.
You play UKTC and you realise like the only place you can sabotage is like an L like this thin.
Yeah, we were doing it. I was like, how are you supposed to do this? And the weird UKTC, the like L's where the footprint is like, that thin. I'm like, I guess you have to do it in the home field or the rectangles. I was like, yeah. I don't think we have audio for you, Franco. I think you might be muted.
Yeah, sabotage is the funny one. So, but yeah, that was another opportunity. My opponent drew sabotage yesterday, and I just killed off a unit and went and killed that unit out of that piece of terrain.
That's fair. Go try again, Franco. Is it working? No, I still can't hear you on that one. got a little technical issues, haven't we?
We've lost the demons.
He's lost in the
back
warp.
into the war.
Back into the warp.
I think someone asked in chat, do we think that people will score less hundreds? I don't think so, really, to be honest, based off like how I'm experiencing tactical. I think maybe fixed players will score less hundreds, but I think tactical players will probably get hundreds at about the same frequency.
I agree. I also think the scores will be closer because of the secret missions, because they're much more viable now. I think there's enough of them in there that I think it's going to take probably about 3 or 4 months or so for everybody to kind of learn how to use them and which are the ones to pick. And then they'll design their armies in a way to say, okay, well, if I'm behind or if I'm close to behind on turn 2, then let me just keep this close so then I can switch over to a secret mission and then pick up a bunch on, using that. And they're very doable. Even the one, like, I still look at the one where you've got to put your warlord on your opponent's objective. What is it, insertion or whatever it is? And I just think, well, Magnus can just yeet across the board onto the objective and just go, all right, here we go. There's 20 points.
Or just be the world leader player and revive Angron on the objective.
And there you go.
That's a hell of a gamble if you're like, I'm going to go with a secret mission and hope Angron dies, and then I revive him, and then he's on that objective. But I think, by and large, secret missions are like a negative thing for world leaders because we can't really do most of them. And a lot of the time what happens for us is that we'll win turns 1, 2, possibly 3, and then the opponent will win turn 4 and 5 as we run out of resources, which is generally okay because we outscore them in the first half, but if they flip a secret mission on us now, they can actually close that differential by quite a margin. So it is one thing that I definitely agree with Dave that like the scores are going to be closer, and I think it's a concern for world leader players is like you're going to have to bake in a little bit more durability because you can't just win the game in the first 3 turns anymore, I think.
Ultimately, I think it affects the team formats a lot more, where it's like your team scores you tighten up a lot more. It's a lot less like 20 zeros.
Okay, so
I think
Go on.
Dark Eldar are going to be good for that.
Dark Eldar, yeah, I could see that getting a bit better, to be fair. It's a weird one, Dark Eldar. I've not really played against them too much. So, I'd like to see them do a bit better. That'd be nice. Couple questions really quick in the chat. So we've got, what are the battle line benefits in Pariah Nexus? It's usually to do with the missions, I believe, isn't it, guys? So some of them get to use like Go to Ground and Heroic Intervention for free. Some of them play with Primary, like you get to Terraform or something like that, score some extra victory points. So there's a fair few. There's nothing baseline is better about them, but it's some of the mission rules and how they interact with them, I believe, is the main thing.
Like stalwarts, for example, they can perform actions while engaged in range, and they can also shoot in that turn. So they kind of get like the Big Knight rule. Then there's prepared positions. They can go to ground and heroic intervention, like we talked about. Then there's like raised banners. There's a few of them. I think there's like 4 or 5 that you get an additional bonus for being battle line.
There you go. And
Or it makes it easier to score the action or something like that.
Yeah, and the second question we got is, do you think the battle line changes are important enough to take excess battle line units compared to before? So are we purposefully bringing more battle line along because of the changes, or are the changes just a nice addition to it if you were already bringing battle line?
Well, I go back to the whole secret mission thing, and that one of the secret missions in there is that if your opponent doesn't have any battle line units in their deployment zone, and then it was like if you can manage to get one of yours in there, or something along that line that revolved. One of the secret missions revolves around battle line units. I think just the fact that having one battle line unit at least in your army just to defend against that is needed, because otherwise your opponent's just going to look at that and go, all right, well, I can play really, aggressive here, and it just opens up the door for them to be able to just swing that at the very end, even if they're losing by, turn 3 or so.
Well, as you were talking, David, I was just thinking about like a sorcerer with a crystal. At this point, you can take a sorcerer with a crystal, leave him on your home objective, and be pretty safe because, he's back there. And then at the end of the game, turn 5, you get over in their deployment zone with the crystal, and boom, there's 20 points.
Yeah, and the thing about the crystal that people forget is that it's not just the unit that it's on. He can target another infantry unit within 6. So it could even be Aramon's squad that just gets yeeted across the board and teleports at the end of the game, something like that. And or even just an Infernal Master unit that's just sitting back there. You can just teleport him back there. There's your battle line unit, and you're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, some armies like Vanguard Invader Nids is like, that secret mission is basically free for them, right? Because in turn 4, they just pick up a squad of gargoyles who are battle line, and then dump them in your deployment zone in turn 5, and there's nothing you can do about it because they can drop them like real close and stuff. So, yeah, I think to answer the question though, I think it's like you're really only like taking more battle line if you've already got a good battle line. Otherwise, you're just taking some as like a safety net, like Dave and Russell were saying. But like, for T-Sons, for World Leaders, even CSM and Deck Guard to a point. I think maybe not Demon so much. The battle line is not so hot, I would say. But like, for World Leaders, it's like your 2 battle line units are like pretty much 2 of the best units in the index. So you're just like, yeah, cool. I'll take a hell of a lot more of these guys if I want. So I think like don't lean into it too hard, and obviously like look at an event pack. If the event isn't running a whole lot of the battle line specific missions, it's probably less valuable. But yeah, just be aware of that secret mission, which can just cause you to lose a bunch of points for no reason, I guess.
Well, and there is a way to prevent secret missions if you're worried about them. They can't start a secret mission if they are behind, right? Or I mean, if they're in front of you.
If they're ahead, right? Yeah.
Yeah, if they're ahead, they can't start a secret mission. So like, if you're going second, and you're gonna have a big primary opportunity to score at the end of the game, then don't let them do that. Because I could see things like where Purge the Foe, where you're gonna go, all right, I'm gonna hold my home objective and get a kill every turn, and try to stay behind, and then grab that 20 late game for a 40.
Yeah, I wish I was good enough to actually control the games that well. I'm not. I pretty much just play to win right from round 1. But I can see what you're saying, Russell.
That's fair. Franco, any look on the mic, mate? He's reloading something.
He's literally just disappeared.
I'm hoping his mic's gonna get working soon. Because he looked a bit upset when you said Demon Battle Line. Because I'm pretty sure Demon Battle Line have some pretty good stuff going on for them.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we're good.
Oh, good. Yeah. No, plague bearers are amazing. Plague bearers are so good. Bearers are really good. I harp on plague bearers, and pink horrors are pretty decent as well, even if maybe a little bit expensive. But I'll give you demonettes and bloodletters. They're crap, but
But don't you insult them plague bearers?
No, I'll be honest. I start every list with 4 units of Legionnaires and 1 unit of Plague Bearers, and then I fill in the rest of my list because the Plague Bearers are so much better than Cultists. I know they cost more than double, but they stick around. So I get my sticky objective, and then like for example, playing in the Dark Eldar, they have like the Court of Archon. You can actually go and base a bunch of things with the Plague Bearers, take the hit, and then wrap your real unit that wants to hit next. Like same thing, sliding a Rhino into a fight first unit, like a fight first Plague Marines. You slide the Rhino in and then make them fight the Rhino, and then they get to only attack into the actual unit that you're going to do the killing with. So Plague Bearers are perfect for that because they can take the hit
I must admit, even
and
though
take up a
I'm
lot of
looking at
real
them,
estate.
I'm looking at plague bearers as well because cultists. I like cultists, but I also get burnt by them a few times, especially since I can't do the boil bite play turn one anymore because rip indirect. But also I have an issue where you come into the purge the foe, which is still a mission, correct, guys? Do correct me if I'm wrong. That is still a mission, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you come across someone that's got like I keep like war dogs or something, and then for me to like use the scout and like want to do stuff, I feel like I'm just giving up purge the foe. Whereas like previously that wasn't an issue because if they had an equally weak unit, I'm like, well, at least I can trade the plague scrolls into that. You kill the cultist, no one kills more, we both get kill one, net neutral. Whereas now with the cultists, plague bearers utility is quite nice. Obviously they have the +1 to charge for deep strike, and they're not going to die to like likes of like havoc launches off the top of them, some war dogs, because that's what kept happening. I kept getting like the 10. I had to put them both in reserves, or like in a war dog matchup, and be like, oh, that's where all the havoc launches go in turn one. I'm like, great. So yeah, I think plague bearers. Because how many points are plague bearers now?
They're 110.
Well, that's actually
And
not
they've been 110 for the previous data slate too. So I mean, I've been playing them, for about 4 or 5 months now. They're like one of my favorite units.
interesting. So one thing we'll touch on there as well, because while we're talking on me taking plague bearers, it's kind of like talking about allies. Knights. Knights can walk through walls now, which is kind of a thing. And it's quite a big thing, and obviously they can action and still shoot. I've seen a lot of people, Don Houston, who's in the chat especially, are thinking of taking like Knight Despoilers in Death Guard, like double Gatling or double battle cannon, because the ability to do all the actions, to be able to stand behind a ruin, walk through it, and then open fire and basically put out a lot of firepower. That's quite impressive. Have you guys been looking at all at them for your armies as allies, or is that just like a? Because obviously we have the contagions that can benefit them, and you guys won't have that. But is that still something you guys have been potentially looking at?
Yeah, very much so.
As an ally. It actually hurts Thousand Suns for us to take stuff as allies like that, because it's taking away from points that would go towards Cabal, and since our whole army focuses around that definitely is the case. I have a Chaos Knights army, and I have been running the Tyrant for a while. Tyrant and Rampager has been my combo, and I've been pretty happy with that. I actually really liked some of the point changes they got. I thought the Abominate getting a point reduction was very warranted, but I still think it needs to be maybe a little cheaper. It really, that's kind of the thing that Chaos Knights in general are missing, is the ability, like in their rules, to really, they operate off of Battle Shock, and turn one kind of sucks because you don't really have a way other than the Abominate to get something Battle Shock to get benefits. So I'm hoping when they roll the Codex out, they have some stuff that gives them, if the army rule is going to stay like that, they get some more changes. Yeah, in general, we don't. Suns doesn't like allying stuff anymore. That's why I just don't see. And plus, with the demon changes, where you have to take, they even restricted it more now. But when you have to take troops to bring in the other non-battle line units, it kind of sucks.
That's fair. What about CSM? How are you thinking about Knight?
I think what my style list, it would take away from what my list does and how it synergizes. But I could see in other lists where, like a Despoiler uh, or even there. I think, man, with so much of what demons can do, like if you had like a list of cultists, right, that where you got all this forward pressure, I could even see a tyrant sit in the backfield because you can cover an entire quarter with a tyrant and said, stop demons, stop Grey Knights, stop everything from coming in. So, but I think it could complement a list like that, but I'm not sure and I haven't play tested it. And then for my style, it would hurt me.
That's fair. I know, like I said, for throws, I think it's the fact we don't really have any long range firepower things, and just be able to, like I said, step through walls and sort of like put out firepower is quite nice. Now, one thing I'm interested in is obviously it makes sense for you guys. Obviously, you don't want to lose Cabal points, but for Dara, you don't really have shooter units, so I'm interested to hear from yourself,
It's
mate.
good,
about
dude.
that. I'm
It's
just
real.
trying to reconfigure the cameras because we have lost Franco,
No
I'm afraid, guys. He's having some connectivity issues. But thank you to him for joining us while he could, and hopefully we'll get it a bit better for next time, and we'll sort of like pick up from there with him. But yeah, go on, explain to me.
I think demons is like obviously trash allies for us because it's like, all right, cool, bloodletters are 120 points. That's where we have to start the benchmark, and Zerks are 90. So yeah, that's not great. But Knights is like very, very interesting because before there was a lot of I guess like debate around like do you Mauler Fiend or do you Carnivore? And now that Tank Shock has been changed, makes the Mauler Fiend worse. Pivoting is sometimes somewhat annoying for the Mauler Fiend as well. But you look at a Carnivore now, and it's the same price as a Mauler, but it's got Battle Line, which depending on the missions can be very impactful. It's OC8, which is very good too, and it's just really good in combat. It's better in combat than a Mauler Fiends in general. And you can have that go out as your early trade piece as World Eaters and just like lift something and say, what do you want to do? And it can take heat off Angron. It can do a lot of other things. I don't know if you want to be allying in Knights for firepower in World Eaters, because if you really want to get firepower, you can still bring the Predators, which are fine. You can bring the Forge Fiends, which are kind of like better than a Brigand. The Brigand at 170 is a bit of a hard sell, I think, for World Eaters.
My bad.
When you... But then now you got to look at the big Knights now, right? Because they're kind of interesting. And being someone who's not running Angron, when you take him out, you drop 415 points. And one knight that I've had in my collection just got a point drop called the Atropos. And the Atropos is now 420 points. And it's insane. Because as far as I'm aware, it's one of the only knights I know which has 2 main guns and a melee profile as well. Because one of its main guns is like a bayonet gun. And that thing fills a niche that World Leaders can't currently cover, which is a way of cracking open tanks. Because it gets +1 to hit against tanks and +1 to wound against Titanics. And its gun is like crazy damage. And then its other gun is also very good. And then it runs into combat and it kicks things around as well. And it's a Cerastus Knight, so it has more wounds than all the other ones, and it's a little bit faster too. So I'm like looking at that guy being like, hello, you want to maybe come into my army and have a walk around and see how it goes? So yeah, I'm eyeing up the Atropos, and I was actually talking in Bristol with a knight player there who I kind of became friends with, and we were both like, you know what, man, if the Atropos drops in points next week, could be real. And lo and behold, it dropped in points, so now I'm like, maybe I actually have to bring this guy out. But maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
You just named Russell's favorite knight, basically.
Yeah, no, that is my favorite knight, and he has a 5+ in bone, so you can't just walk through him with like somebody like Abaddon. You gotta,
yeah, exactly.
You gotta be careful, because if they spike those in bones, then you're gonna lose Abaddon, or a similar style unit, because the Atropos does hit like a truck.
He also has the coolest sounding names and abilities. He's got Macro Extinction Protocols is his ability, and the Graviton Singularity Cannon is his main gun. I'm like, it doesn't get any more 40k than those words, you know. So he's been a little pet of mine that I've had him for a while, and I've wanted a reason to run him. And you know, if you want to not run Angron and you're not really sure where to put the rest of the points, he's like exactly the same points as Angron. You know, you just got to find 5 points. So I think it's cool. Obviously, like, stuff like a Despoiler is going to be really good because it just brings a decent amount of firepower, and just being able to maneuver through walls is obviously very, very relevant. But I think World Eater players who were running Mauler Fiends should probably be looking at Carnivores now. They strike me as a playing Pariah better than a Mauler Fiend is, you know.
And they have indirect missiles on them too, which can be actually kind of sneaky because they were already hitting on fours, right? So, you know, or was it the brigands that hit better in indirect?
Yeah.
So the carnivores, I believe, were only hitting on fours. So
Yeah.
you're not really losing much there. It does give you a little bit of an ability to chip away at stuff that's hiding behind walls. So
It's also just like OC8 is very good, you know. And another thing, you know, Carnivore, free heroic intervention, or not free, but 1 CP heroic intervention,
Yeah.
super relevant. If that guy walks in, he can really disrupt combat because, you know, maybe an infantry unit is charging another infantry unit, and it's like, all right, you heroic in with a Carnivore, maybe they don't have the tools to kill a big knight who then goes in and just harvests that unit. So I really like them for World Eaters, to be honest. I do really like them at 140 competitive price point.
you mentioned the OC8 on the carnivores, and I think that's definitely the selling point for me if I was playing World Eaters. But hypothetically, let's say in the Codex they decided just for some reason they make Maulafried's OC8. If they're equal on OC, are you taking Maulafried?
I think it depends on the tournament pack currently, because if there's a lot of battle line based rules, like if you can do the free heroic, if you can action in combat, that one, you know, or if you can action and shoot, or advance and action, any of those battle line based ones, immediately the Carnivore is better because it can do all of those things where the Mauler Fiend can't. But the other thing that I like is that the Carnivore hits slightly better in combat, especially on twos as well. And with Tank Shock was the big selling point for the Mauler Fiend, because what you would do before is you would go in, you would Tank Shock something, and then you would get better at hitting. But now, because Tank Shock is so much worse for the Mauler Fiend specifically, I don't love it really anymore. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't big on the Mauler Fiend anyway, but it's just easier to move the Carnivore around the map as well. You know, it's got the round base, you don't have to be concerned about losing movement from pivoting. I would struggle to find a good reason to take the Mauler Fiend over the Carnivore now, in my opinion.
It does make me think about the fact that if you now are more incentivized to take stuff like the Knights than you would something like the Mauler Fiend, that would slide in there. It does make me wonder if when the Knights Codex comes out, allying in the Knights doesn't count as battle line, and then in Codexes they are battle line. Like only when they're in a Knight detachment do they count as being battle line at that point. And that,
I mean, it's pretty weird, right? That you ally in a Carnivore and he's battle line for your World Eaters army. Like that is just genuinely quite weird.
Yeah. So it makes me wonder if this will just kind of like naturally shed a light on that. People will do this more, and then they'll realize GW will essentially realize, oh yeah, we don't want that happening, and then they'll tailor that in the Codex.
Speaking of pivoting, obviously pivot changes now, so all our Primax can 360 spin for free, which is really nice to hide wings and whatnot. But has now with the capped 2 maximum inches for as much pivoting as you need. Is anyone looking at our favourite crab bots again? Anyone? Please.
So no, but I would like to talk about pivot if we can.
Yes, it is important. Before we get into this, can I just just before we get into pivot, it is to do with pivoting. But I just want to point out, okay, I have seen everyone else talk about pivoting, like, as in the sense of, oh, cool, our Primax has been free, and then when they came to talking, like, you know, tanks with, like, flying stands and stuff like that, every video I've seen for every faction has been, this needs fixing, or this needs changing, apart from the Eldar videos, which are all like, Eldar is amazing again, and I'm just like, yeah, it would be you fucking elves that are trying to abuse it, you bastards.
So I think what you're talking about really revolves around the fact that if you let's take a big Knights base, right? That big giant oval base. The premise on a lot of this stuff is that if you take a Knight, you make a charge roll of 9 inches, and then during the charge you pay 2 inches to rotate it, you gain 3 inches. You essentially, I think it was like 1.5 inches if you do the math correctly. Yeah. There's all sorts of, you know, we're talking English versus the metric units and stuff, and we won't get that debate.
The proper one versus the made up one. Yeah, you're right.
You're right. So I have on very good sources that I know about. GW knows about this. this. And what they're doing is they're looking at this and saying, look, guys, we want to see if you can handle this. Can you handle, we don't think it's going to be super disruptive, right? Like that's what I'm understanding their thinking is that they don't think it's going to be disruptive. Roll this out and it will be kind of a, can you guys handle this and play with it, or are you going to absolutely double down and use this thing to every inch of the rules, and do we just take it away in about a couple months? And so it's really funny to hear everybody's opinions on this in terms of what their take of whether the community can actually handle it or not. I think they have the right idea. If you look at Pivot, the reason this was put in was because up until now, the problem has been a divergence in the community around, do you pay for pivoting the model, or do you not pay for pivoting? And I can definitely understand the viewpoint, which was centered around the sentence that basically said that no part of the model can move further than your movement inches, right? And so therefore, moving and pivoting the model could very easily be argued that that's part of the movement itself. The problem with that is it led to a lot of contention over that, and I really like GW's approach where they are trying to streamline the game and remove rules that create that contention. That's why when 8th edition came out to begin with, they got rid of the whole stupid side-facing stuff where if you're shooting from the side, you get better shots than if you're facing the model. And then, if you were playing back then, you remember you had so many games where it was an argument of, well, no, I'm facing this side more versus that side more. And it just creates contention because it's debatable, right? You can create a situation where two people can come to two different conclusions on something. And they're trying to write the rules now where they're clear enough and simple enough that it's impossible to get to that kind of thing. Yeah. I think with these rules, they have the right scheme, they have the right idea, they're headed in the right direction. It's half-baked right now. I would really, really appreciate if the community can handle it, because I think the end result is going to be better for the game because it will simplify and reduce any kind of that contention that came up around like, well, you had to rotate to go around this corner and things like that. Now it's just take 2 inches off your movement, go around the corner, and you're good to go. They did leave, and I'll finish with this, they did leave one really good sentence in there when they were writing this in the core rules or in the errata in there where it is, unless otherwise stated on the data sheet, which to me says they're leaving the door open for certain models to say, when this model pivots, it costs 3 inches or 4 inches, whatever it is. And I'm sure they absolutely know about the problem with things like Raiders and the Tentalis, where models that have a round base that measure to the hull, that's where you start to get issues. So anyways, I'll get off my pedestal there.
No, I agree, because the thing is, and I'd agree, I would hope we could manage this. Unfortunately, I don't believe it. I believe someone is going to do something stupid at an event, and everyone's going to be talking about it, and it's going to be all over Reddit, it's going to be over YouTube, because some guy couldn't resist himself. Because
you're going to pivot your PBC in some weird ass way and get everyone in loads of trouble.
That'd be you and your Mauler Fiends with your oval bases.
Me and my Cornlord of Skulls, baby. That thing gaining a 2-inch on the pivot, that's significant amount of movement.
It's like already I'm seeing people making videos about how to abuse it, and I'm like, guys, just fucking stop. Like you can deep strike your grav tank in, and then instead of having a 9-inch shot, just the way I see it is, I will measure the charge from where it is before pivot. That's the distance. That is the distance you gotta roll. I'm not gonna then be like, oh, but now I'm gonna spin my Mortarian's wing so the wing is 2 inches closer, so now it's a 7. No, it's whatever I measured it when I bloody did it in the first place. Simple as. If you
this makes me really love. Go ahead. Sorry.
Go.
I was just going to say, this makes me really like, in a lot of cases, you have the angle shooting clause, which is you're trying to abuse the rules to gain advantage. And I really like that clause at tournaments where a judge can simply look at it and it's usually very clear. If you're just charging a knight in a straight line and you're pivoting the knight and you're like, I'm getting an extra 1.5 inches on my charge, I would expect, if I was TOing, I would say, no, you don't get that. You have to roll a 9. You have to make that charge. You don't get a 7-inch charge off of that. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I like what their intent was, though, because, for example, I played a game the other day where I had a 6-inch advance on my Rhino, which I absolutely love Rhinos, but I ended up moving 5 inches as the crow flies because I was like this, trying to get around this building.
Yeah.
So I mean, I like it for that aspect where it makes the game a little easier to move in, not to gain an advantage. That was the whole point. Like, because like, how many times have you gone, all right, I'm about to move this vehicle from here, and my goal is to get to here. Can you please help me measure this thing around this building so I don't go too far? It shouldn't take two people, 2 minutes to figure out how far a rhino can move. That to me, that's what the intent was, not to. I'm going to bring this channel in and have a screen charge. That's crazy.
Yeah, I agree. Because I mean, like, I'm the same. It's that I tend to like. I'm much more of an infantry player, and a lot of it is because I just don't like vehicle movement because of how clunky and like awkward it can be. Like you said, just trying to get a rhino around a building. And the amount of times I'll like measure it, and in my head I'm like, yeah, that's about right. And then my opponent goes, I don't know about that, and I'm like, oh shit, am I too close? And he's like, yeah, you should probably about 2 inches back. I'm like, oh, sorry. Because I'm just not used to being like you said, you want to go around a building, it's like 1 inch there, 1 inch there. Is it half an inch there? Is it quarter an inch there? What was it there? So in the end, I just end up screwing myself over after I'm just driving in clean straight lines because I just can't be bothered with pivoting. Whereas now I know I can just be like, okay, drop 2 off. There we go, done. So I like the change. I think it's a good change. But whether I trust the community not to abuse it, no. And it'll be an Eldar player or it'll be a Tau player. That's my money. Money down, boys. Money's down.
Our favorite, the Custodes, somehow, right?
Oh yeah. He's like my
Grab
Codex
tanks.
is bad. I need
Grab
every
tanks.
advantage I can get.
Well, you know what? Maybe it'll lead to a good thing where Dark Eldar players are going to have to start getting in venoms at the base instead of the tip of the wing. I'd like to see that.
True.
That would be good.
Lycos, thank you very much for coming to play, mate. Massively appreciate the support of the channel. Again, if you're enjoying the stream, guys, do leave a like, and if you're not subscribed, do subscribe because we'll be doing more of these going forward. And Russell and hopefully Frank will be back on in the future as well. But yeah, I think pivoting change was overall a good one. Whether it gets abused or not, we'll wait to see. Was there any other sort of core rule changes that we sort of like think is worth talking about to do with the game in general? So something that affects it. Obviously, indirect is one. We've already kind of touched on it, but I think as much as even it sucks for me, it probably is for the betterment of the game. Even I can't deny that it's not fun being directed off, and it's all fun and well me doing it, and then I come across like someone does it better than me, and I'm like, hey, that's not very nice.
I do like how they rewarded some of the core stratagems, like for example the reroll stratagem. I mean, where it can specifically references fast rolling because I've been in games where people are like, "Well, you got to roll them one at a time." I'm like, just So now the reroll allows for fast rolling without having that conversation. Heroic intervention being 1 CP, like we talked about earlier. There's just a few nuances. I think they changed like the wording on 6 or 7 of the stratagems, and I'd send the rules commentary on page 8 and 9 if you're interested. But like I went ahead and printed out page 8 and 9 because those stratagems have changed so much. So
the other really big thing is the change to like stratagem interactions, where now it's stuff like the Space Marine or the Captain, where you get the stratagem free unless it actually specifies that you can use Fire Overwatch for free and use it if something else has already used it. All you get is the effect of getting it for free. That's it. So now and in a lot of cases, what they've done, like with Cabal rituals, we have one that's 6 points. You get a strat. It used to say you can use the stratagem for free, even if another unit has already used the stratagem. Now the net effect change is that it reduces the stratagem by 1. So that's all it does. So 1 point stratagems still can be free in effect, but you don't get to do it a second time because it doesn't specify a specific stratagem in there. I think the other thing of that's actually really big is the whole difference between stuff like the Calidus Assassin, the Vect ability, where now it's not just you get that for being on a battlefield or being there. Essentially, you have to be within 12 inches, and you increase the stratagem cost by 1. So in some cases, I could see them being kind of cool, but I think it generally was kind of not a cool thing, and that a lot of Space Marine and Imperialists basically just brought the Calidus Assassin, and it was just basically like, is that a battle tactic you're using? And I get asked that about 300 times per game, and kind of like, no, the only one is my reroll hits and wounds strat. Like, I'll let you know when I use it. Would you like to vect it? Okay, of course. And then you go on from there.
Well, I mean, like just that changes a lot of math too, because you take something like Custodes where, it used to be if I can get them under 2 CP, I don't have to worry about fights first. Well, you have to worry about fights first now with anything with a captain in it. If they got one CP, it changes a lot of math in a lot of places. So I think the stratagems are gonna have a bigger effect than
Yeah.
anything.
Me and Dara are just there like free stratagem. What is that?
I got one, bro.
Oh, do you actually have one?
I've got an
Aiden,
it's
did
an
they do something with
enhancement,
grenade?
and it's a specific one as well. So my one is like you can take an enhancement on a character which allows them to heroic for free, and because it calls out heroic specifically, you can do it twice. Um, it's less good now. I was running that at Bristol, and it was crazy because when heroic was 2 CP, it was like, yo, that's good. And you put on a Master of Executions, you got to fight first. Now you could theoretically heroic twice, which I don't know if you want to pay the enhancement cost for it, but it ain't nothing. And Chaos Cults, if you put the Enforcer with the Traitor Guardsman, they can Overwatch for free, which is real exciting. But that's all I know of in my own armies.
Aiden, I was going to ask you, wasn't there a change with Death Guard and Grenade? Like, how the interaction with grenades?
Yeah, so our Biology Putrefy used to have a once per game, you can use the grenade stratagem, even if it's already been used that turn. That's now been changed to just once per turn you can use the grenade stratagem for free, so we can potentially get 5 free grenades. But it's lost the clause saying even if it's already been used. So I'm not sure, because what Dara just said, then if it specifically calls it out, does it have to specifically call it out and say you can use it still? Or is it just if it says it can?
I think it specifically has to say you can do it again, but it has to be a specific stratagem. But the one that I'm actually like on that change, I'm actually kind of like freaked about is Nid players or Dark Eldar players using, we'll say, like an Archon or a Swarm Lord and just bringing that Vect-like ability, or Demon players, they could, I guess, 3-inch Deep Strike Kairos, because it projects an aura now and it increases all command points used in that aura. So like, you know, you do that on Swarm Lord surrounded by like Hive Guard, he's projecting like an aura in the middle of the melee bash, and all your stratagems are now 2 CP or more. That's like actually genuinely quite scary and one of, I think, the most impactful changes in the game. And it what you want is someone who has a Vect like ability who can also, you know, hold up in close combat. I think when you have that combination, you can massively change how the game flows. You know, it's really significant.
Or Overwatch, like that absolutely gets affected, because if you think about it, you can take your Archon and you take whatever unit, if it's with them or something like that, and then you run them up, and it's like, all right, well, you have 1 CP, and Overwatch now costs 2 essentially within range of these guys, so you don't get the Overwatch there. So I mean, I had that factor into the game that I played yesterday.
And there's also a way for Archons, or that enhancement that an Archon can get. There's a way to project that to 3 Archons. So in other words, I think you can get the Vect spread out between the 3 Archons, which is incredible.
Yeah.
Well, can you or can you not? Because my reading of the wording on that was that the Archon says if this is your Warlord, you can use this ability. So if it's not your Warlord, does that mean you still get the aura?
I think this is going to be one that tournament organizers are probably going to have to look at, because if you're a Dark Eldar player right now, you're definitely looking at how to get 3 Vex on the board at one time. I know there's a way that I'm not 100%.
Do we believe that the intent was that if they bring 3 Archons, the intent would be that all 3 Archons should be able to have the Vect ability?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that it wasn't a thing until you now changed the way the Vect abilities work. So now I think this is one of those unintended consequences that they'll have to shore up. You know, I don't think their intent was for all 3 Archons to have a Vect with this new rule. But again, you know, leave it to the elf players to find a way to get 3.
They'll take anything they can get.
Yeah.
It's a big change though. I think it will be like for the likes of World Leaders, you know, when you're wanting to fight in that mid board all the time anyway, you got lots of good ones TP stratagems. Could be quite scary actually, to be honest, you know.
Definitely. So sort of to come towards the end of this and wrap it up, I wanted to ask you guys, what do we think then the next meta is going to look like? What armies are we scared of? I mean, Ironstorm got nerfed. I'm happy. I'm done. You can wrap me up. Ironstorm is hopefully dead. That's all I wanted to see. I hate that thing so much. Also, I just want to shout very quickly, the data slate was way bigger, way more impactful than I thought. And GW have proved they're willing to do more than just points and like faction detachment updates, because we saw NIDS getting basically almost a full rework, including weapon profiles. Admech getting a lot of weapon profile updates plus new rules, tons of things like that. And then we got like core rule changes. Like this is literally the biggest, like, even from the past 2 editions, I'd probably say this is probably the biggest like balance update we've ever had. And they've done more things with it
100%.
than just like points and, you know, nerfs to like stratagems. So I will give them props for it, because regardless of what happens now, I'm happy to see them willing to make such especially to stuff that's already come out in codexes in print. I know it's annoying for Admech players now to have a lot of stats and profiles in the codex now be outdated and not be able to reference it, but at the same time, would you rather like just be left with like dog shit for like 3 years, or would you do something about it? Would be my argument to that one. So yeah, I will give them props that they actually have put seemingly a lot of effort into it, and regardless of how this pans out, I think it will be exciting.
Yeah, it's like definitely 10 and a half edition for sure, and it makes sense now. Like that was kind of the rumor coming out within the week leading up to it. That was kind of what I was hearing a lot louder, was that it's going to be a massive update. It's 10 and a half edition essentially, or 10.5, whatever you want to call it. And you know, that definitely holds up to this. Once it came out, you realized all the updates that were in there, all the, you know, the pivot rules introduced, things like that. So, yeah, I mean, I also, just to answer your question, I think I definitely touched on the fact that I think melee armies are going to start to dominate the meta. It might not catch on right away, but I think eventually, within like the first couple months, I think melee armies are generally, when you look at, especially at the GW terrain layouts, if that's the format you're playing, I think we're going to see things like Blood Angels, Dark Templars, Dark Angels, World Eaters, you know, any army that can generally just absolutely scare the crap out of folks. Custodes, I think, could be an underdog here, where they absolutely could be able to take advantage of the terrains. If you look at the layouts, you can stage your army very well on most of the layouts that are there. I think that's what's going to end up having a bigger impact on what we see being good and what's not good. And that, just being honest, I don't think that bodes very well for us and Thousand Suns, because a heavy melee army meta is generally not good for us, especially if it's like hyper aggressive armies that can get across the table really, really quickly. That's always been kind of an Achilles heel for us.
Yes.
I think one of the ones. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I think one of the ones I'm scared of. Yeah, one of the ones I'm scared of is Tyranids, this synaptic detachment thing, going into some type of hybrid monster list. That's something that's going to be a great counter meta, and it's going to be really hard for, I think, you know, Thousand Suns, Death Guard, World Leaders, and CSM. I'm kind of worried about that. That's the one outlier, and I haven't seen too much of that out here. I'm scared of synaptic monsters.
I could see that, especially because with actions as well, like, and they got a lot of buffs to also like forcing the battle shocks out. So they're going to be better at brawling. They're going to be better at stopping your opponent doing actions and scoring, and that's going to be and also Tyranids technically, if you declare you're going for a secret mission, they can just hold off Shadow on the Warp until we're out turn 5 and then drop it. And that could literally, like, in that one dice roll, your entire game could be done. Which is kind of mad to think about. So, yeah, I think Tyranids could be sleeper. I still think the thing is, I think Tyranids are going to suffer from their power not being represented in the win rate, because they're a starter box army, still a lot of new players, so I don't think the Tyranid win rate...
They're not going to be easy. Like, the top Tyranid armies are going to be, like, maybe Synaptic Nexus, or they're going to be... I think Vanguard Invaders is like probably the strongest one, but that army is like harder than T-Suns to play in its current format. I sat down with one of my buddies today to talk about it. We wrote a list and we were like, this is like 9th edition T-Suns in terms of the amount of moving parts, and it's like nothing is good by itself, but everything is good altogether. But if you can pilot a list like that well, it will score maximum secondaries and it will deny an awful lot of primary for your opponent. So I genuinely wouldn't be that surprised at this WTC if we see a lot of Vanguard Invader coming out of different teams. But yeah, I think they're one to watch, you know. But as you correctly said, the win rate is going to be dragged down by a larger player base, most of which are brand new players who don't quite have the experience to maybe master the faction, you know.
What do you think is going to be... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask. I didn't want to derail the the trail we're on here, but I did want to point out that some of us are going to be getting our Codex this year probably soon. Like I would bet between Dara, myself, and Aiden, before the year's out, one of us probably gets a Codex, right?
I am like 90% sure it's going to be T-Sons. I don't
Can we
think
just
world
talk
leaders
about
are going to get
robots for a
one.
second, and the fact that we saw
yeah.
those rumors, and I am really freaking excited about it. Not just the fact that that's what we've been wanting that for a while, but that was also kind of like we're really not likely to get it, but it's on our wish list kind of thing. But the fact that it shows up in White Dwarf, generally, I'm definitely putting my tinfoil hat on here. Okay, I get it, but generally that tends to mean that it's a bigger release. And dare I actually say that we actually get what Death Guard got, and we actually get like the rest of our model range fleshed out. I will be so excited. I will be partying through the rest of the year, into next year, essentially.
I would love to see that. So for those who don't know, very quickly in chat, there was an article in White Dwarf recently where basically it was a lore segment talking about Vashtor and his sort of relationship with Magnus and the Thousand Sons, and they mentioned him basically getting the old 30k automata, the sort of like psychic automata, up and running again. Obviously a bit more warpified and a bit more chaosified, and then them. He's basically trying to like it's almost like a wheeler dealer show it to Magnus, be like, you can fit so many Cabal points in these bad boys, and tapping the bonnet, and Magnus is like, they're pretty good.
Oh my god!
So hopefully that's something.
We've also seen a River
about...
Engine like model, which is like a battle automata with the T-Sons banding on it. So like, I think it's a done deal. Like I think it's basically guaranteed they're getting it, which I'm like. I love it for you, but I want it for me, you know?
Oh, yours will be coming soon. Like,
I mean, the one thing I'm really excited about is like possibly psychic dreadnoughts, like that. Like, why are we the one legion that should have librarian dreadnoughts, but we don't? Like that just doesn't make sense. When especially when you think about the fact that like we really don't have as many of the really powerful psychers anymore, and so you want to keep the ones that have fallen in battle or whatever. You want to keep them alive. On top of the fact that Magnus actually designed the Osiris pattern dreadnought, like I can go on and on forever. I don't want to preach, but we should have that model for sure.
It would be super cool to see, because I mean, like as Death Guard, like we probably ain't gonna get like anything. Like we'll probably get a character when it comes out, the standard, which I'm more than happy with if it's a cool character. But like just the Death Guard players, I know we like want to speculate on units we're gonna get. I'll put real probably not gonna happen for us. But I would love to see T-Sons and World Eaters both get their full army ranges expanded, because it's just going to open up like list variety as well. And I think as well they would really struggle to make interesting detachments with the current set of units you have, and that the new units they bring in would actually like open up design and creative space for them to play around with. Because then you can have like a Cybernetica detachment sort of base thing. World Eaters can have like I don't know, please give me Berserkers on Blood Crushers, and you know.
Yeah, the Fire Riders, baby.
I want to see that rule come back where he has fly again. Give him fly. I want to see him back out as fly.
His detachment is just like give everything fly.
That's the one thing we don't know right now. So on the Thousand Suns side, we're speculating, trying to figure out how many detachments we're going to get. And
probably
if you
4,
look at,
right?
Well, we think 9. I think 9. And here's the reasoning. Yeah. So, first of all, Thousand Suns have 9 cults. And the detachment we have right now is the Cult of Magic. That mirrors what we got in the previous edition, where we had a army detachment or whatever it was at that point for each cult, essentially. I think they're setting the stage to do the exact same thing, and I actually look at the CSM Codex that just came out as an example of why that could happen, because they got effectively like 8 detachments. Granted, I get it, it's CSM. Space Marines didn't get anywhere near as that. So I think everybody kind of gets caught up in their reluctance to do massive amounts of detachments for armies. And I think T-Sons will probably get like 9 different detachments, but there's going to be like some overlap, or they're going to do something with them that's a little bit different, where it's like, all right, are they really 9, or is it more like 5 really at the end of the day? And there's just like, this one does it a slightly different way, that kind of thing. So
if you get 9, Tau players are going to be on Reddit so angry. They're going to be so angry.
It's Tau players. I don't give a shit.
He's like, Aiden, you were expecting me to respect Tau players. No, that's fair. But I'm super hyped because the thing is, also what I point out, there is no Codex roadmap. We've fully caught it up now. Part of the question mark one, which people are thinking is Inquisition, which sure, whatever. But after that, we are due a new Codex roadmap soon. I'm hoping that's something they're going to stick with because I do want to see which one of us is next because the CSM book has, even despite the nerf you just got, Russell, the book has filled me with so much hope because that is such a cool, flavorful book, and there's tons of good stuff in it. Don't get me wrong, not all of it's as powerful as each other. Like Fellhammer Siege Host is like, it kind of like feels like it's lacking the units it needs to like really shine, but the rest of them, I think there's like more than one viable one in there. Like Deceptors looks really fun. I don't care if it's competitive or not; it's really fun looking. The Chaos Cults is not only fun looking, but apparently actually pretty good. Raiders and Packbound are obviously the most on the nose, like being good, and the Vashtor one as well. So it gives me hope that they're actually going to be able to do all our Chaos Codexes justice, and we'll have some really, really cool rules coming out of it.
But you can kind of get an idea of probably what factions we're going to see by looking at BS or BCP now, because they've reorganized all the BCP factions. So like when I was checking into this tournament for this coming weekend, they removed a whole bunch of stuff.
Oh, I hope, because currently there's a problem on BCP where there's actually 2 World Eater ones. And it's just complete RNG, depending on, because there's only one option to select, but there's 2 leaderboards. So you just get sorted into one of them. So the 2 events I've been to this year are in different World Eater leaderboards. And Brian's 7 events are spread across all the leaderboards as well.
Pain. That is pain.
Why not? Why not?
I do not envy the database admin who's got to go in and then fix all of that and merge them together. Like, that is going to take a while.
I was like, because I went onto my BCB on Monday after Bristol, and I was like, oh, okay, Bristol's up. And I was like, where's Manchester? And then I searched my name. It was like 2 events. I was like, hang on a minute, what's going on here?
Wait a minute.
Yeah, it's a funny meme. But yeah, I don't know. I'm as hype as everyone else. You know, this is a great time to be playing 40k. And I just want to see that roadmap. I want to see. I don't even really particularly care if world leaders aren't in the next like 6 months.
Yeah,
I'm just having a ton of fun with the army right now. But yeah, I'm hype.
Is 11th edition coming next year?
I hope not.
Don't say that. No.
I actually agree with Dara. I hope not, because this edition's so great that I feel like it's got at least another year beyond that. They could.
My thing, I think if 11th edition came out, it wouldn't actually be 11th edition. It'd kind of like 6th to 7th, where it's like
it's gonna be soft. Yeah,
it's not a full reset. It's a soft. It's more like we're gonna write all the current rules as like the new edition, but really all it is we've just got rid of all the FAQs and stuff, and now it's like just one document, which is your core rules.
So like what they did from 8th to 9th edition, essentially.
Yeah. So I hope it would be more like that, but. I'm not in any. I want my Codex, but and they, to be honest, I've just realised their pace for Codex releases. What has happened these last 2 months? Like it was going so slow. I was like, oh, I'm not going to get Death Guard Codex for 2 years, and then like for the last like couple of months now, we've had like CSM, Tau, Orcs, all like rapid fire after each other, and then GSC sisters, Custodes. So. Yeah. If they keep this
Dark Angels.
Dark Angels. That's what I mean.
Before you know it, you're now halfway through the list of armies, basically.
So I mean, I'll be happy to see the new roadmap if they're gonna release it. Obviously, it's Sigmar release next weekend or the weekend after, so I don't expect to see any 40k news for a little bit. As Sigmar takes centre stage.
Boo.
Hey, I like a bit of Sigmar every Sunday. I've got dwarfs back there, man. Your favourite. Oh yeah, just to remind you, Dara, just current painting project here, just so you know. Just for you, buddy.
Whatever, dude. I don't care. I got that horse off my back now, you know.
Yeah, I can't wait for you to turn one charge my 2080 point infiltrators. That's gonna be fun, isn't it?
Listen, we'll talk about it when we get to it.
But yeah, so should we wrap it up there then, guys? Because we've been on for a while now, and obviously people want to enjoy their evenings and get on with the rest of the day. So we'll sort of wrap it there. But overall, are we excited for 10.5 edition / Pariah Nexus?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's gonna be super good for the game. Gonna be a lot of people really happy about this. I think fun meta, very fun meta.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
No, thank you so much for coming on, Russell. Like I said, you're more than welcome to come on all the future ones, and I'll get the background changed so we'll have a CSM section on the background, and hopefully Franco can join us again when he less internet troubles. But yeah, more than welcome to have you on, mate. More than welcome. And hopefully people enjoyed the CSM input, because the idea is we want to try and get everyone that has a Chaos faction. So we will need Emperor's Children eventually, and Chaos Knights don't exist to me, so that's fine. Maybe if I'm feeling generous, we shall see. But yeah, I am looking forward to it. Like I got my first game tomorrow of Pariah Nexus, so I am going to now go and pack my box ready for tomorrow. I probably need to make the list as well, so I should probably crack on with that, shouldn't I? But for now, thank you so much to everyone that has tuned in. Thank you to all my guests here. Guys, shout yourselves out one last time. We'll go from Dara first.
Yeah, if you want to catch more of us, check out the Red Path on YouTube, Spotify, or any of the other places. Hop into our Discord if you want to chat to myself or any of the other boys from the channel. We got lots of great content coming up. Top of the list tomorrow, me and Brian, we're going through 2 new World Leader lists, one Nangron, one Angron, and it's got some hot, spicy stuff in there. So yeah, it's great time to be World Leaders. Great time to start World Leaders. So come on over to the right Chaos God.
Yeah, so
it's your time to shine, man.
It is his time to shine. So yeah, go check out the Red Path. It's a bit like Disgusting Resilient, just the quality is just a little bit less, and it's about a worse faction, but you know.
But more quantity, right? I'm like quantity over quality. Why don't you call me like Auspex Tactics?
I was going to say, calm down, Auspex Tactics. and if you wanted to become a fellow silly Doombolt man, flying out Doombolts, where can you learn how to fling a good Doombolt?
Yeah, the easiest way is to find us. I mean, the easiest way to get there is actually through the Thousand Suns Reddit, subreddit, whatever it's called. And from there's a link to the Discord server if you can't find it. But a lot of us are on Discord. And then you can also, if you want to hear Russell and I talk about Thousand Suns and hear me complain about a lot of the rubbish with Thousand Suns, you can find us on TizcanPodcast.com.
And Russell, do you have anything to shout for yourself, or are you just with the Tizcan crew?
Yeah, I'm with the Tizcan podcast and hanging out and having fun in Texas and traveling the country playing 40K. So that's the False Emperor.
I have to start wearing cowboy hats here soon.
That's the one thing we can all agree on is definitely death to the False Emperor, death to Ironstorm, death to Sisters of Battle, which just got nerfed, and yeah, hopefully
death to Custodes.
Death to Custodes, and hopefully this is the time for at least one of this Pantheon to rise to the top. No pressure, Dara. Good luck.
You're our only hope.
Yes. Save
I'll
us.
carry the weight.
Save us, Khan the Betrayer. You're only hope. It's in the name, woman.
He'll do it. He'll take you all out on the way in, but he'll do it.
Alright, everyone. We'll catch you all later then. Stay rotten from myself, Blood and God and stuff from Dara, and Magnus did nothing wrong. I'm sure I'm doing everyone's outro for them because I'm learning now. But yeah, take care, everyone. We'll catch you all on the next one.